Dr. Jackie Veith doesn't really need introduction for most people at the CCLE. She's been doing this for over 2 decades, classical Lutheran education. Her husband is obviously Dr. Jean Edward Veith, who is one of the founding members of the CCLE. She is currently our Director of Accreditation and Certification. This session is on accreditation. She's also doing another session on certification at another time this week if you're interested in that as well. Please welcome Dr. Jackie Veith.
Thank you. There is a sheet going around that asks for your name, your email, whether you would like to serve on a site visit team, et cetera. So if you haven't signed that, please do make sure that you sign it before you leave. I would, very helpful when we need to populate our team. Yes, as Anna said, this is about accreditation. Accreditation is not a horrible, scary thing. I want to assure you that many schools have survived it, and that, you know, accreditation is a process to help the schools. It is all aimed at helping you. So, having said that, I will just move right on into this. Oh, and that was not what I meant to do. So let me get back to where I meant to be. There. There. Okay, in our accreditation, we still have the 4 marks that we have always had. The board is very faithful to remaining with just these 4 marks. Mark 1 is on the theological commitment. Mark 2 is the classical education commitment. Mark 3 is the governance. And Mark 4 is the assessment and effectiveness. And by the way, if you would like to have a copy of this, I can email you a copy of the PowerPoint afterwards if you want to be able to just take notes and not worry about copying everything. So 4 marks, started out with 4 marks. They have barely changed in 14 years. So what has changed has been how the school handles the expenses of it. So before it was always just between the team and the school. Now CCLE is kind of becoming a coordinator of it, a facilitator. So when you start this process, we create a file for you. We start a statement for you right away. And all of the expenses go on that account. And then at the end of your successful accreditation, we send you the statement that has all of the expenses of the team members for traveling, the lodging, etc., supported by receipts, of course. So that is one change in the process. So, and as I said, CCLE takes the responsibility to reimburse the team members. And you'll appreciate it if you're ever on a team, a site team visit, because that means when you make your airline arrangements and you've already put it on your credit card, you don't have to wait 3 or 4 months before you get reimbursed in order to pay the bill. So we're trying to be more sensitive to the needs of the team members as well as to the school. The other item, and in addition to the site visit expenses that will be on the statement, will be the accreditation fees, which remain the same. They have not changed in the last several years, so they will still be the amount, and they depend on the size of your student body. So if you're a small school, you pay less than a middle-sized school than a larger school. And the breakdown is, I think, I want to be careful, I think it's 30 and under for students is a small school, then, or so 29 and under. 30 to 99 is a middle-sized school, and then 100 or over is a large school. So that information is in the document of accreditation timeline and information, which is posted on the website. So, okay, and again, the school remains responsible for that, but not piecemealing it out, it's all at once. When we started out, it was costing a round estimate of between $1,500 to $2,500 to host a site visit team. But we've had inflation since then, so now in a year that you're anticipating a site visit, I would suggest that you budget maybe $3,000 to $4,000 for it. But that should cover everything, unless you live in Washington DC or California or some very expensive place. So let's talk about the marks. What are we looking for in Mark 1? Mark 1 is the Lutheran commitment. We want to see that you have a school that is committed to Orthodox Lutheran doctrine and practices, both in your written documentation and in your practice. So accreditation is really the process of seeing what do you have in your written documents and how is that actually practiced. And for the Lutheran commitment, we would expect to see Orthodox Lutheran doctrine practiced. So we have another document that kind of breaks it down like this. You would have written, the commitment would be written in your parent handbook, in your faculty handbook. It would be written in, referenced throughout your school. It would be very evident. So if we were unable to find any evidence of any written commitment, that would be, it would make us wonder. I give an example of a school, not any of our CCLE schools, but they had a very glossy, very beautiful recruitment, almost a magazine. It was just so beautiful, 28 pages, and not a word about being sponsored by a Lutheran anything until the very inside back cover down at the bottom in about size 6 font. So they bragged about their drama program, about their athletic program. They did at least mention their academics, but we would expect Lutheran to be up front and throughout everything that you say. So if you are sponsored by a church, obviously we would be curious to know what the relationship with the church is. If you're an RSO, that you would explain that you're an RSO. That we're starting to come into more varieties of relationships that still qualify you to be eligible for accreditation. So as we work at each school, we figure it out. We do hope, as an ideal goal, that you have a completely Lutheran faculty. We acknowledge that at the very beginning, very few schools could reach that. So that alone does not prevent you from being accredited. But if you have non-Lutheran faculty, it's not unlikely, so in other words, it is likely that you would get a recommendation that you attempt to get an all-Lutheran faculty. So, again, Mark 1, the Lutheran commitment. Mark 2 is the focus on classical education. So it has 2 parts. It has a focus on the faculty's grasp and implementation. In other words, their pedagogy. So when they are teaching, are they using classical techniques to teach? So that's one thing. And the second is on the curriculum. What curriculum are you using? What books are you teaching from? What original sources are you using? So again, we have, in terms of the teaching, do the teachers have any understanding at all about using the trivium as a pedagogy, using grammar, dialectic, and rhetoric as a scaffolding, so to speak, for teaching, for the instruction of it. Do they take the students and cycle them up through them as the students are ready to progress? Or do they just keep everything at the grammar level? Everything, every test is a true false no matter what. So, are the faculty teaching classically? And then again, the second part about the curriculum, we have two goals in your curriculum because we want the school curriculum to be selected very intentionally to provide knowledge, facts, and not for students to be constructing facts, to be constructing what they believe. And secondly, we want the curriculum to teach them about the various vocations. Now there's an example where you see the Lutheran commitment is going to flow into the curriculum because we want them to be prepared to see that, yes, they can serve God and their neighbor in many different occupations or professional vocations, as it were. So we will look at your class materials. We always usually enjoy looking at the classroom libraries, looking at the school library if you have a separate one. We would be wondering if we ran across books that promoted evolution or other questionable contemporary things that are being pushed in government schools now. So we will look at that. Again, on the curriculum, we would like to see the focus on the language areas and the math skills, again known as the trivium and the quadrivium. We want the history and literature of Western civilization to be presented in a balanced way. In other words, it's not to be wrong just because it's Western. It's not to deny that Western civilization hasn't had some very ugly episodes, which it has, but it is to also promote the success of some Western civilizations. We would expect there to be Latin. Some schools even offered Greek, which is very nice, but we would expect Latin and we would expect it to be starting in the lower grades. So by third or fourth grade, some Latin should be offered. And there, if you have some questions about Latin programs that you can use, especially if your teachers don't know Latin yet, that's not to worry. There are programs that have been developed for teachers to pick it up. So, Mark 2, the classical focus. Mark 3 is about the governance. So here we're going to look at your documentation for your governing body, Board of Education, school board, school committee, whatever you call it. Do you have one? Does it have, or what is its role in guiding the school? What is its responsibilities throughout the year for dealing with the needs of the school? So it's all just basically focusing on governance. So here we take a look at the policies that should be written down. I have to be honest, they should be written down. And are you following the policies? You have gone to the trouble to have a policy. If you're not following it, we will wonder why you haven't revised it or canceled it. So we have a rather long appendix of possible things that might apply to your school. And I also, this is a good place as any for me to point out, we're looking at your school in your community. So you're in a unique area. Only you know what your parents are like, what your students are like. We don't expect you to be a cookie cutter copy school like any other school. We expect you to have your own distinct personality because you are unique. And yet we're going to look for these essentials of curriculum, essentials of teaching techniques, and the essentials of good governance. So we may do it differently. And an example of that, many schools have uniforms. Many schools have dress codes. Very different approach to it. Some schools finance it by tuition. Some schools finance it by gifts from the church and actually do not charge tuition. So there are differences. There are areas where it's different, and that's acceptable. That's fine. It's your school will be looking at how you have set it up. Do you have a question?
Yes, ma'am. So I saw in the description it was schools and homeschools.
Yes.
How does this work in homeschools?
Again, it's very unique, and it depends on the homeschool. For a homeschool, we would probably have a smaller team, for instance. We wouldn't necessarily need as large a team for visiting a brick and mortar school. But we would still expect to see the curriculum that's been selected, to see the teaching process, the Lutheran commitment. Actually, it might be even easier in the homeschool to see the Lutheran commitment. For the governance, we would be checking to see what kind of state regulations does your particular location have for homeschooling. And if you're meeting that, if you're doing any kind of a co-op arrangement with any other group, we would need to check into that. So it varies somewhat. Well, obviously it varies a lot, actually. So if you're a homeschool that's interested in doing this, we'll need to talk about it, just kind of translate this into what a homeschool would.
Okay, I'll talk to you later.
Okay, sounds good. Again, a brick and mortar school, I'll try to specify that. We wouldn't be expecting to see your documents that you shared, especially with the parents, with the families, the students, with the faculty. So your faculty or employee handbook, your some schools are developed or are large enough that they actually need a board handbook, Board of Christian Education or school board handbook. Probably a homeschool would not need that for the parents. If you're in a brick and mortar school that has an early childhood program, then we have part of them is marked that deals with that, because early childhood, the preschool aspect, does need a little bit separate attention. Now, if you have one, you don't have to get it accredited by CCLE. Some of our schools have chosen to do it that way. They have their K through 8 accredited, but not their preschool. Some schools have done preschool all the way to 8 or all the way to 12. So it's up to you to decide what kind of levels do you want to be accredited. But we do have it if you want to do that. So again, we want to see the written documents. We want to see some minutes. If you've had a board meeting, you should be keeping minutes, because that is just good governance. We want to make sure that your leadership is functioning and that all is going well. So, but again, we have a long list of Appendix A to apply to that you might look at. Mark 4, institutional effectiveness. Sometimes it's called assessment. It's kind of the self-reflection part of the mark, where do you, at the end of the school year, when you're kind of collapsing because, it's finally the end of the school year, do you look back and evaluate what worked, and what didn't work. That's what we need to know, is that you are taking the time and looking at what did and did not work, and then you're making decisions based on that. So we would look for an overall strategy to regularly evaluate all aspects of the school. So you're gonna evaluate your students, of course, that goes without saying. Hopefully, you're also evaluating your faculty. Now, you don't evaluate students and faculty in the sense of, I'm gonna look for all of your weaknesses and get you on them. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about evaluating your students in the sense of formation. What do they need help in? So we need to be sure we're providing more in that area next year. Or for your faculty, we really didn't do as well in Socratic questioning as we had intended this year. So we might want to have some in-services, maybe watch some CCLE videos on it, and maybe kind of focus on some practicing on it to do a little bit better on that next year, right? So, but people are not the only thing. If you're a brick and mortar school, you've got facilities. Is your facility falling apart? Do you need new plumbing? Do you need a new roof? Are the tiles warping? The windows are broken. You just have to have somebody that's keeping on top of maintenance needs. What about your finances? Are you stable financially? Are you running a deficit? We're not going to ask you specifically, because it's unique to your own school and to your own situation, but we're going to be checking to see that, yes, somebody is monitoring. You are not making it financially, and in a year, you're probably going to have to close because you can't pay your bills. That would not be very prudent. So the pastors usually are spoken with and are talked to about the spiritual development of everybody at the school. So, what's the role of the pastor in meeting with the students? What's the role of the pastor meeting with the faculty and the headmaster? Oh, don't forget to evaluate the headmaster too. So just always, sometimes that gets overlooked. So we have developed a few forms. If you don't have any, that could help guide you. So again, once you start the process, you just email me and say, hey, what about this? Or I've got a question. And we talk then. And it's very, I'm here to be a resource for you. That is, and actually there's several of us that are here to be a resource for you. So, again, the this and not this list. Okay, one thing that we're starting this year, last year we had the largest group of schools that we'd ever had go through the process. 10 schools, which was exciting and wonderful and just about put me out. So we now have team captains who will also be serving on the teams, so that I will not be going on every single site visit, which I have up to this point, except for one school. So we have 2 of our team captains here, so I would ask them to stand if they don't mind. This is Julia Hobrecht, who is headmaster at Our Savior Grand Rapids, Michigan, and Miss Melinda Heine, who is just experienced in every aspect of classical education.
School board.
School board. She just helped her school go through, her, 3rd or 4th school, go through accreditation this last year. So 2 of our other people, Jocelyn, I think, is presenting right now too, but Jocelyn Benson is also a team captain, and Renee Castellero, Reverend Renee Castellero will be, but his wife is having a baby, so for some reason he's not here this week. So you may have any one of the 5 of us actually working with you on your team. So what's the best preparation for taking your school through accreditation? And that's by going on one and seeing what it's like from the team's side. Then you know what, you gotta go back to your school and get ready. So if you are interested, that's why on the piece of paper I have, on the one column, are you interested in serving on a site visit team? To say, yes or no. Is there anyone here who have you? Kate has, yeah. And of course Julia and Melinda have. So it is an exciting opportunity. It is an exhausting opportunity, but it's a fascinating opportunity because you see how somebody else is doing it. And you usually go back to your own school, okay, I want to try this out. I'll share an example of when we went to Redeemer Classical School. I'll give them full credit for this. Every time the students passed in the hallways, they sang. And it was just glorious to hear them singing the hymns. And another thing I'll pass on for just absolutely free, they had the kids clean up the school at the end of the school day. They had the closets organized. And they teach the students how to sweep the halls, and some of them vacuum the rugs. I mean, it was brilliant. So kudos to Redeemer. So if you're interested, let me know, and if the opportunity arises, then we'll try to get you on a team. Okay, and again, if you're serving on a team, I have a process, a document that tells you how we do it, the materials that you get, talk about reading the self-study, which is the application that the school submits, writing the rough draft, which is the critical part, and then the logistics of people coming from all across the country to end up in one little area to visit a location. To be a visitor, to participate on a site team, you need to know and understand the marks, the 4 marks that we went through. You need to be able to identify and evaluate school evidence. So when you're looking at a teacher in a classroom teaching, you're going, oh yes, she's doing repetition, she's doing chanting. You just need to know what you're looking at. You need to have attended an accreditation session. This one qualifies. You need to be able to write sections of a report. You'll be assigned a certain area that you write the rough draft for. And then you also have to be very confidential about the information that you learned from schools, because we see the schools, both their public face and their at-home face. And you have to be very respectful of that. Usually they're very much the same, but I hope you understand what I'm saying. You don't tell tales. I'm only sharing about Redeemer because those were both very impressive, positive things. And he's on the board. Okay, our policies about the team. We usually have 2 to 4 people who have attended a session. We always have a Lutheran pastor. Always a Lutheran pastor to deal with Mark 1. The lay people do not evaluate Mark 1, the commitment and implementation of the Lutheran commitment. So that is the way it is. We may have someone from your own district. Then that helps out usually financially if there's somebody that can just drive to your school. That's better than having to fly everybody. We have a conflict of interest policy, and it's whether you have a relationship with or connection to the school, obviously. You can't have been a faculty member or headmaster or board member or any connection with the school for at least 5 years. You can't have a relative at the school. That's why I can't go to Memorial anymore, now that my daughter is teaching there. I can't touch that school. So And when possible, we always try to get at least one member of the team from a school similar to you. So, in other words, this kind of, I'm glad you brought up homeschool, because I was just talking to Susan about when we have a homeschool site team, we'll have a homeschooling person on that team, because they will have the experience to know whether something is working or not. If it's a large school, you need to have somebody on the team that has the experience with the challenges of a large school, just like you need the experience for a new school or a small school, somebody who has to deal with combined classes and things like that. So we try to kind of very carefully create the team that will provide the most benefit for the school and being able to help with the formation. Okay, like I said, the accreditation fees are the same. They haven't changed for a couple of years. We'll pray that continues. Oh, it was 49 or fewer. See, that's why I was a little off on my numbers. 49 or fewer. The total is 550 to 99, 750, and 100 or more, 1,000. So start while you're little, and that's less expensive. Once you are accredited, you go, you get your accreditation, like get your picture taken, you get your plaque and the conference and all. You go through the year, and about April, I send you an annual report, and you submit that back to me by July 1st, I think. And that year constitutes year one of your accreditation cycle. And you tell me how many students you have, and that's what your annual school fee is based on. It's $3 per student right now, with a minimum of 75, I think. So, but when you come to year 5 and you're renewing, it's like you're doing the application all over again. That year that you're covering the accreditation expenses, you don't also do the annual school fees. So we're not going to double ding you in that particular year. Okay, if you have any questions, as I say, you can always contact me. I answer the accreditation@ccle.org email address, and I will be willing to have telephone conversations with you. You know, I just realized there's something I did not put in here that I should have. If you go through CCLE accreditation and you would like to get NLSA accreditation, we have a co-accreditation agreement. So they will accept the CCLE application and the CCLE visit as serving their purpose, and you only have to pay them their money. So you do the work for us, you pay them the money, you would end up with both accreditations. As a matter of fact, the National Accreditation Commission is meeting this week, and they are voting to accredit this afternoon, I think about 7 of our new CCLE schools that went through the process this last year. And they will end up with NLSA accreditation in addition to their CCLE accreditation. So, yes.
Will it be up to the school then to submit the paperwork or whatever to get that approval? Or does the CCLE forward the application?
I have always forwarded it. One of the things that I ask on the application very early is, are you going for CCLE or and co-accreditation with NLSA? At this time, it's only, well, unless you're a Texas school, then I know you're also going for LSAC. But so, if you say that you're going for NLSA co-accreditation, that gets put in the report. I contact Alan Freeman to let him know, and he is aware that it's going on.
Is their length of accreditation the same as CCLE then? Is it 5 or 10 years before?
Yes, we did it so that when we first were starting the CCLE, ours was a little off, so we adjusted ours so that it renews and you're in sync, the same cycle for both 5 years. Yeah. Yes,
Did I hear that NLSA is doing what you guys kind of do, have a small school, large school, fees?
I can't speak for NLSA. I'm not there this year. I'm here. They have discussed that many times. And that's all, I don't know what they've done. I know that their fees are higher than ours, than CCLE and for accreditation, but I'm not sure whether they, Kate, do you have NLSA?
We do,
Do you have annual fees also?
we do.
Okay.
And it's more.
Do they have a split between small?
No, it's very similar to what you, as far as like number of students, because we have to pay Texas, but I mean, we also have Texas deal. So you have to pay that assessment, okay?
Based on the number of students.
So,
So it's not really small, large, it's whatever students you have, and that's what we pay.
okay, good. Yes,
Does the reciprocity work in the other direction? If you were in NLSA accredited? Okay.
no. Their marks or their standards are not, don't address classical concerns. I mean, they have governance, and I'm not trying to be critical. They have governance. Certainly they have concern about financial sustainability, their facilities and all, but they don't have, I think, an item on the mission. But to us, the Lutheran commitment is so essential. And then the classical education is also so essential. And they don't have any way to address that. So they accept us, and I'm very happy to promote them. I want to play nice with Senate. I want to take over Senate from the inside. But a school that does NLSA doesn't, no, they're not classical. Sir,
I'm curious what impact said they accept yours, but you have 4 marks, we have 4 marks, and they have several more standards, if I recall, like the enumeration's different. Do you receive a score based just on these marks, or are they scoring based on their standards?
That's not,
They don't score you.
No.
They just,
NLSA doesn't
No.
score it then?
no,
Okay, just curious. Because they might find
no, it's a stamp.
it's just.
Yeah, they don't review. Is that what you were saying?
Yeah,
They don't review, you're just accept.
they just accept it. Okay, that's good, thank you.
the way that, a confusing thing about the NLSA has been that I go to their July meeting, except in very rare occasions like this week. And they have changed theirs probably 3 times at least since I've been going there. At least 3 times. And they're always improving and changing things. And I salute that they're evaluating and, self-reflecting on what they're doing. But I think consistency is really helpful. And it's why the board, I brought up that maybe we should review our marks, and you'd have thought I was offering my kid to be head. I mean, it was just that, what? We're not going to ever. They spent, I won't say the board, and I will commend the board for it, they probably spent, 4 or 5 years before they solidified these marks. They have tweaked a little bit of the wording, and when you actually see the application, you see the mark, and then there'll be some, sub-marks, some components that kind of flesh it out, and those are the things that you're actually providing your evidence for. So for Mark 1, Lutheran commitment, one of the subcomponents is what is the worship practice schedule in the school. In other words, that's where you're going to show us or tell us that the classroom teacher has devotions every morning, or the school has Vespers once a week, or you're going to tell us the team is gonna come then and watch to see that that happens. But this, so these kind of abstract marks will give you some very specific things that you provide the evidence for, and that supports that you're meeting them. When it comes to scoring the school, we just have a 3-point score. And then 1, you didn't do it. It should be a 0 actually, but 1 will give you an effort for submitting the application. Or 2, that you meet the mark, and that's the important thing. And 3, that you exceed the mark. And the really exciting thing is now we're going to schools the 3rd time. And we've been doing this long enough, they're in their 2nd renewal. These are schools that we're going, gosh, what can we find to help them? They're just doing so well. So that's what I would encourage you to think about. Do it as soon as possible. Our approach is, how can we help the school? What directions can we guide you in to make you a stronger school? And you work on them, you get recommendations that way. We'll say, okay, you need to buff up your, imagine if you had a Latin program that was only by tape, okay? Because that might be what you had to start out with. We might have come up with a recommendation of, it might be, the team recommends that the school do Wittenberg Academy Latin instruction. That's an online, but it has a teacher that could interact with the students or some other way. Our recommendations are always to benefit and to strengthen the school. Then you have your 4 years probably, actually, to work on doing those. By the time you've done that a couple of times, your schools should be in pretty good shape. Of course, you always are trying to, you change headmasters, you change faculty. It's not like you ever get there and you finally you're perfect, and so now we're done. No, you also get new students every year, or maybe you get new students every year. So it's very much just an ongoing, but the goal of the team will be to come up with requirements to help you. Now, requirements you do have to address. And you remember how I said you could get a score of 1, you didn't do it? That doesn't mean that you won't get accredited. You can have a 1 on assessment. And when we were first starting out, schools were not really doing assessment very seriously because nobody had asked them to. So now they get 1s on assessments. You might get, and it could be just a little component of something. There are certain ones that you have to get a 2 on. All of the items of mark 1 have to be a 2 or a 3. There are some items of mark 2 that you have to get a 2 or a 3. But there are a few of them that if you got a 1, it wouldn't prevent you from getting accredited. And even if you got accredited with a 1, we're not going to tell anybody. I mean, nobody is going to know except you and me and the team. Well, and the CCLE board, because they read the report. But I mean, we're not saying, oh, they've got to work on this particular area. Nobody's going to know that. That's just information for you to grow on. So, do you want to add something, Julia, Melinda? So,
What if maybe sharing with people that how the report is completed on site and then shared before the team leaves, how that process works?
okay. As I said, you have to, be willing to write a portion of the final site visit report. You're assigned, we have 4 marks, and those are divided up between the team members. So some of them Melinda usually gets marked 2 or 3 because she's so good at it. And so is Julia, good at it. I usually take mark 4 because I love assessment. then of course we have a pastor who's doing the one. They start writing based off of what they see in your material, in your application. But it's just a draft. And so then when we get there, we're spending the first day in the classrooms, in the offices. All we're doing is watching, looking, observing, thinking, no, it's okay. Talking to the teachers, talking to the students, talking to parents, talking to board members, it's an exhausting day, but that's what we do, and we're taking notes. By the afternoon of day 2, we're kind of getting to where, okay, now we're gonna confirm, we're gonna look at the rough drafts that we've written. We're gonna see what it's like, if we still think. And at that point, when everybody's kind of contributed, we get to look at everybody's part. And the whole team goes through sentence by sentence by sentence, agreeing with, well, no, I didn't see that, or I saw something that was even a better example of that. So everybody on the team contributes to the final site visit report. Then we have the reading of it. The headmaster invites whoever the headmaster wants. That's not under our control, that you can have it by yourself, or you could have your board members there, you could have your faculty there, parents, whoever you're comfortable with, and we read it out loud to you, and at the end, we tell you what the team's recommendation to the CCLE board will be, to accredit you, or to renew your accreditation, or to not accredit you, or to not renew. So, that is a very dramatic kind of meeting maybe, but it's also very solidifying, because we're telling you all of the strengths of the schools that we saw, as well as identifying the weaknesses and telling you where these are the recommendations we have for you to consider. So, and then we're gone, we're done. We walk out and that's it. So, we send the report to the CCLE board. They meet quarterly, they read them, they decide, they discuss it, maybe they have some questions, usually not, and they approve or accept the report. In the last 5 years or so, I've started taking pictures of the school that I put at the end of the report, just to kind of give the board a flavor of what your school looks like, a flavor of it. It only goes to the CCLE board. By no means does any picture ever show up in social media. I don't even send it to Alan Freeman. I don't even send the pictures to him. Just to kind of share what your school is like with 7 members of the board. So, does that, yeah, okay, good. So, any other questions? Okay, sir.
Just, pardon my ignorance, what's the difference with certification and accreditation?
Okay, I'm so glad you asked. My husband didn't understand that.
Well, I feel.
Accreditation is the process for a school, the whole school. Certification is the individual teacher or administrator. And the school accreditation, obviously that involves a whole lot of people, all contributing, getting the evidence together and all. Certification is entirely done initiated by the person. I mean, you may say, if you're the headmaster, you may say, okay, I want you to get certification by the end of the year. And that's encouragement, but it's still, the application comes from the individual. So, yeah. I know Ed didn't understand that. How could he not understand that?
That's why he has you.
Anyway, but yeah, I'm glad you asked that. I'm gonna repeat that one at the certification one. So, okay. Yes, and somebody else had, yes.
So NLSA requires annual reports, so they track what you're doing. I mean, do you have annual reports between accreditation visits?
Yes, about April, I send out an annual report. You get it back to me by July 1st. You tell me how many students you had that year. That's how we assess. Well, actually, you do the calculation of 30 students times 3, $90. You send the check in. We've started this summer, as we're getting students, as we're starting to get more high schools, we're starting to collect more information. In a way, I want to apologize that it's a little bit more complicated than it used to be. It used just to be, what have you done on your recommendations? Because I'll make a spreadsheet for you, and you just kind of track what you've done, and I'll indicate, okay, it's completed, you've done it. You needed to revise your student handbook, okay, here's revised, okay, done. And then next summer, when you get it, the spreadsheet, you'll see that, oh, it's been looked at, and oh, we're off, that one's taken care of. So yes, you get it for about 4 years, and then you need to start the renewal process. When you do the renewal, let me go back a second. Now we're wanting to ask more questions about if you have a high school, what are your graduates doing? Are your graduates going on to higher education? Are they going into the military? Are they going into families straight away? Are they going in, well, starting new families, I should say? Are they going into business? What are our graduates doing from CCLE schools? We need to start figuring that, getting that data so we can talk about it. How are our students doing in terms of college entrance exams? How are they doing on AP tests? We think that they would be doing pretty well, but we need the evidence from the high schools to give us that documentation. So we are asking for some material like that. And like I say, you've got from about April to July to come up with it. I know Texas schools have to report to Texas. Some some districts, education executives will also want a report. But so far, they've been willing to accept the CCLE report to that district. Not all of them do, and so I just have to say, if your district requires it, then you have to provide it to them, but they don't all. So I think ours is easier than the NLSA annual report.
It is.
But we tried to make it very focused on what really needs to be shared. And then if it doesn't need to be shared, we're not gonna have it. Okay. Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, so we wanted to know how it can affect not having Latin teachers, because in our community, it's very difficult to have teachers with Greek and Latin. So how much does that affect going through the accreditation?
That is a very good question, coming from a school of Latin America. We're going to have to, the board will have to discuss that, how to handle it. Do you have any Latin at all? No? But you have English because you're bilingual.
Yeah.
Do you have French, German?
No,
No,
just
no.
English.
Just Spanish and
And
English?
English.
Okay. Well, the board is going to have to consider that. I'm not sure, it's going to be interesting as we try to think about how to do international accreditation. So it will not be identical to American accreditation.
Right.
Yes.
Well, I wonder too, I mean, we're using, the video helps, that come with Memoria Press, because we don't have any experts in Latin. And so we're sort of doing that with our students. I mean, if you have English, people who understand English,
Yeah.
then you can use those same, I would guess, use those same videos.
Mhm.
So you can teach Latin. I mean, you wouldn't be an expert
An
yourself,
expert.
but you'd be borrowing from whatever Swope or whoever is doing it. But yeah, so they could use those resources, right?
Yeah,
That's-
that is
that's-
helpful.
If that checks the box, maybe that will fail our accreditation, but.
And inevitably, the teacher then learns.
Well, correct, right.
Yeah, the teacher does. And as it becomes a priority for the school, you know, you just
Right, right,
develop a
yeah.
little bit more expertise in there. By the time you have your teachers that have taught their level of Latin for a
Right.
couple of years, they're ready to, they're gonna move up with the
Exactly.
students. So I won't forget the question, but I don't have an answer yet. So,
That's okay.
but thank you for asking.
My son who has studied Spanish also has commented how similar Latin and Spanish are. So if you're thinking about somebody wanting to study Latin, don't be intimidated by it because it's way harder for us simple English people to learn English into Latin than Latin to other languages. Because it's a Romance language.
That is true. The connection between Latin and Spanish is very close. I started to say much closer than English. I still think it is much closer. Okay. Any other questions? Yes.
The class that you have this afternoon, is this a continuation class or is it the same?
The class this afternoon will be on the certification. And one of the things that usually happens as a result of accreditation is that we give a recommendation that the faculty and headmaster become certified. So the bigger challenge is the accreditation at first, and then it's the filtering through getting the faculty individually certified. So for instance, Kate is working on her faculty and had 6 of them certified this year. So this afternoon will be it'll be similar in that we have marks, but they are different marks. Okay, well, just be sure that you signed it in on the sheet of paper and no mas.
Thank you.